Every gamer knows that feeling. You look at your library and see hundreds of games waiting to be played. You see the next big release, the next massive open world, the next game everyone online says you need to experience. But somehow, despite having more games available than ever before, something feels different. Games don't seem to stick with us the way they used to. A game launches, everyone talks about it for a week, maybe even two, and then suddenly it's gone, replaced by the next announcement, the next trend, the next thing fighting for our attention. Meanwhile, the games we spent years creating memories with still sit in our minds decades later. So, what changed? Did games actually get worse? Did developers stop caring? Or did we simply change the way we experience games? Because maybe the biggest problem with modern gaming isn't that games are too expensive. Maybe the problem is that we've turned them into something disposable. And today, we're going to talk about why games don't feel as memorable anymore, how the industry created a culture of constantly moving on, and why the games that truly matter aren't the ones we play the most, they're the ones we never forget. You know what's funny? Every single time a publisher announces the price of a new game, the internet completely loses its mind. It doesn't matter what the game actually looks like. It doesn't matter if it's revolutionary or mediocre, or just another annual sequel with a fresh coat of paint. The only thing people want to talk about is the number sitting on the store page. $70? Are you kidding me? $80? Gaming is officially dead. Publishers are getting way too greedy. It's become such a predictable cycle that I could probably script the comment section before the trailer even premieres. Now, don't get me wrong, nobody likes spending more money. I'm not sitting here begging companies to charge us even more. If someone walked into my house and said, "Hey, would you like to pay another $20 for your next game?" I'd probably escort them to the nearest exit. But after thinking about this conversation for a long time, I realized something. I don't think price is actually the biggest problem anymore. In fact, I think we've been arguing about the wrong thing for years. Games aren't exactly becoming too expensive, they're becoming disposable. And those are two completely different conversations. Because let's be honest with ourselves for a second. Have you ever bought an expensive game that you absolutely loved? Of course you have. Maybe it was Elden Ring, maybe Baldur's Gate 3, maybe Persona 5. Pick whatever masterpiece permanently rented space inside your brain. Chances are you spent dozens, maybe hundreds of hours exploring every corner of that world. You watched lore videos after finishing it. You recommended it to friends. You listened to the soundtrack outside the game. Years later, someone mentions it, and suddenly you're smiling because you remember exactly how it made you feel. Now, ask yourself something else. Do you actually regret paying full price for that game? Probably not. Because when a game genuinely earns your time, the price almost disappears from your memory. You stop remembering the receipt and start remembering the experience. Then there are the other games, the ones you bought because the trailer looked incredible, the ones every influencer said were the next masterpiece, the ones that dominated your YouTube recommendations for exactly 4 days. You played them for maybe 6 hours, 7 if you were feeling generous. Then they quietly disappeared into your Steam library where they'll spend the next 100 years collecting digital dust next to the other 73 games you swore you'd get around to someday. A few months later, someone brings that game up, and your immediate response is, "Oh, yeah, I kind of forgot that even came out." That's weird when you think about it. Two games can launch at exactly the same price. One becomes a lifelong memory, The other becomes another icon buried somewhere on page 6 of your Steam library that you accidentally click every winter sale while looking for something else. Same price, completely different value. That's when I realized something. Maybe value has never been determined by how much a game costs. Maybe value is determined by how long it stays with you. Now, let's rewind. Think back to when you were younger. Most of us didn't have a mountain of games waiting to be played. We had birthdays, Christmas, maybe saving allowance for months just to buy one game we've been staring at every time we walked through the Walmart. I still remember doing that. I spent longer looking at the game cases than my parents spent buying groceries. I already knew exactly what was on the back of every box because I'd read them all 100 times while pretending I wasn't impatiently waiting for my mom to finish shopping. Then the magical day came. You got the game, and that was your game. There wasn't another major release next week stealing your attention. There wasn't a subscription service dropping 10 more titles tomorrow. There wasn't an endless backlog whispering in the back of your mind that maybe you should be playing something else instead. You played what you had. If the game was amazing, great. If it wasn't, well, congratulations. You're about to become the world's biggest fan of mediocrity because that's what you got for the next few months. Looking back, that almost sounds terrible. But honestly, I think it made us appreciate games more. When you only had one or two games, you naturally spent more time experimenting. You replayed levels just because they were fun. You searched every corner of the map even if there wasn't an achievement waiting for you. You invented your own challenges. You tried beating bosses with terrible weapons just to see if you could. Half of the best memories weren't even the things the developers intentionally designed. They happened because you simply existed inside the game long enough for weird things to happen. Some of my favorite gaming moments are things that would sound completely ridiculous if I tried explaining them to someone who wasn't there. Spending an hour trying to launch a warthog into orbit in Halo, seeing how long I could survive 5 stars in GTA. Driving straight into the ocean because I genuinely believed there had to be something down there. None of those moments were very productive. None of them helped me finish the game. But somehow they're the memories that stick. Modern gaming rarely gives us enough time to create memories like that anymore. Before you've even finished one game, another one is demanding your attention. You open YouTube, and there's another review telling you what you should buy next. You open TikTok, and somebody has already ranked every boss in a game that released yesterday. Twitter is arguing about the next controversy. Then Steam emails you another sale, Game Pass adds 3 more games, and PlayStation announces another short case. Everything wants your attention. All the time. Eventually, gaming starts feeling less like sitting down to enjoy your favorite hobby and more like trying to keep up with homework. You're never caught up. There's always another game. Another thing you're supposedly supposed to care about before the internet moves on without you. And maybe that's the real issue. Because I don't think we've reached a point where games cost too much. I think we've reached a point where we don't give games enough time to actually matter. We've become unbelievably good at consuming games. Buying them, reviewing them, speedrunning them, moving on from them. But somewhere along the way, we forgot how to simply live with them. Games used to feel like places you visited for months. Now they feel like content you binge over a weekend before the algorithm tells you it's time for the next thing. And if that's true, then maybe the biggest problem facing modern gaming has absolutely nothing to do with a $70 price tag. If you've been playing games for a long time, you've probably noticed something weird. Not necessarily while it was happening, but when you look back at the last 10 or 15 years or so, games don't seem to stick around anymore. They explode onto the scene, dominate every conversation for a week or two, and then completely disappear. It's almost like they have an expiration date built into the code. Think about how many games released last year. Seriously, try naming them without looking anything up. You can probably remember a handful of the really big ones, but there are dozens of perfectly good games that came and went so fast you probably forgot they even existed. Not because they were bad, simply because something newer came along and stole the spotlight. Now, that's really the scary part. Games don't even have to fail anymore to be forgotten. They just have to stop being the newest thing. I don't think enough people realize just how much this has changed the way we experience gaming. We don't really play games at our own pace anymore. We play them at the pace of the internet. If everybody else is talking about a new release, we suddenly feel like we should be playing it too. If creators are making videos about it, we do not want to feel left out. And if Twitter is full of screenshots, suddenly our perfect game that we were enjoying yesterday starts feeling old. Nothing about that game changed. We changed as a society. Or maybe more accurately, the internet changed us. One of the biggest advantages of the internet is also one of its biggest problems. We have access to more information than ever before. That's incredible. If you're stuck on a puzzle, you can find the answer in seconds. If you're curious about lore, there are creators who have dedicated years to explaining every little detail. Hint, hint, nod, nod. It's an amazing resource, but there's a downside to having everything immediately available. Nothing gets the chance to be mysterious anymore. Let's take a trip back. Do you remember when rumors spread around school about hidden characters? Somebody's cousin unlocked Luigi in Super Mario 64. There was always a secret ending that nobody had actually seen, but everyone swore it existed. 99% of it was completely made up, but it didn't matter. Half the fun was trying anyway. Now, a game launches, and within hours, people have data mined every file, uploaded every ending, found every collectible, tested every weapon, and created a 30-minute video titled Everything You Missed. It's honestly impressive, but it's also kind of sad. We've gotten so good at solving games that we've accidentally removed the joy of discovering them. And it isn't just secrets, it's everything. Before a game even releases, we already know the frame rate, the review scores, the best builds. And somehow people are already arguing about the sequel. The game hasn't even had a chance to exist yet. It's like reading the last chapter of a mystery novel before you even open the first page. I catch myself doing this all the time. I'll buy a brand new RPG with every intention of going in blind. 30 minutes later, I'm on YouTube searching things I wish I knew before starting. Then I'm watching best early weapons. Then don't make these mistakes. Before I know it, someone else has basically played the first 10 hours for me. It's ridiculous. I robbed myself of figuring the game out because I was so worried about playing it the right way. And I know I'm not the only one. We've become obsessed with optimization. Every RPG has a meta build. Every survival game has the fastest route to endgame. Sometimes I wonder if we're even playing games anymore or if we're just following instructions written by someone who already did the fun part for us. Don't get me wrong, guides definitely have their place. If you're stuck on a puzzle that's been driving you insane for 2 hours, absolutely look it up. Nobody's handing out trophies for staring at the same locked door until 3 in the morning. But somewhere along the way, guides stopped being a last resort and started becoming step one. We've convinced ourselves that making mistakes is wasting time, but mistakes are where some of the best memories come from. Nobody remembers the perfectly optimized playthrough where everything went exactly according to plan. People remember accidentally wandering into an area they definitely weren't supposed to be in. They remember using the wrong weapon and somehow winning anyway. Those stories stick because they're yours. Nobody else experienced that exact sequence of events. The more we optimize gaming, the more everyone's experience starts looking exactly the same. Then there's the content cycle, which I'm known to be a part of. This one is impossible to ignore if you spend any amount of time on YouTube. Every major release follows the exact same formula: review, ending explained, Easter eggs. Is it worth buying? Is it already dead? The funniest glitches, the best mods. And finally, about 2 weeks later, why nobody talks about this game anymore. 2 weeks, that's all it takes. A project that took hundreds of developers 5 or 6 years to create gets chewed through by the internet in a matter of days. Imagine spending half a decade building something only for people to speedrun it over a weekend because they don't want spoilers. It's honestly kind of depressing when you think about it. Developers spend years creating worlds they hope players will lose themselves in. Artists obsess over tiny environmental details that most people will never notice. Then the game launches and everyone's in such a hurry to get to the ending before TikTok spoils it that they barely stop to appreciate any of it. The internet didn't make us stop loving games. If anything, we love them more than ever. We just don't spend enough time with them anymore. We've turned gaming into a race, and the finish line keeps moving. The moment we finally catch up, another game appears, another update drops, another showcase happens. We're right back where we started, trying to keep up instead of slowing down. Maybe that's why so many people feel burnt out despite having more incredible games available than at any other point in history. It's not because there aren't enough good games, it's because there's never enough time to let any of them become unforgettable. I think one of the biggest reasons older games feel so much more memorable isn't because they were objectively better. That's a dangerous rabbit hole because every generation thinks their era was the best. Ask someone who grew up with the NES and they'll tell you gaming peaked in the 80s. Ask someone else who grew up on the PlayStation 2 and they'll swear nothing has ever come close. I bet give it another 20 years and there'll be kids saying Fortnite Chapter 6 was the greatest era in gaming history. Nostalgia is just that powerful, and it has a way of convincing us that everything used to be magical. But I don't actually think nostalgia tells the whole story. I think older games had one advantage that modern games rarely get anymore. They had time. Time to grow on you, time to become part of your daily life instead of just another weekend distraction. Back then, finishing a game wasn't necessarily the end of your experience with it. Sometimes it was just the beginning. You beat the final boss, watch the credits roll, and then immediately start another save file because, well, what else were you going to play? There wasn't another massive AAA release waiting for you next Friday. You didn't have Game Pass offering hundreds of alternatives. Steam wasn't emailing you about another sale every 3 days. You stayed because you genuinely enjoyed being there. That's how games became comfort food. You knew every shortcut and every stupid little animation that nobody else noticed. You weren't discovering the game anymore, you were just living with it. I think that's something we've quietly lost over the years. Take Skyrim, for example. Ask 10 different people about their favorite Skyrim memory, and you'll probably get 10 completely different answers. Another person completely ignored the main story for 100 hours because they got distracted picking flowers and joining every guild imaginable. None of those moments were scripted. They happened because players spent enough time inside that world for chaos to happen naturally. The same thing happened in Minecraft. Those memories that were made in Minecraft weren't created because Minecraft forced them to happen. They happened because the game gave players room to create stories that belonged to them. That's the difference between a memorable game and a disposable one. A disposable game gives you moments, a memorable game gives you stories. That's a very huge difference. Moments are impressive while you're experiencing them, stories stay with you for years. Think about GTA, for example. If I ask you your favorite mission, maybe you remember one, maybe two. But if I ask you about the dumbest thing you've ever done in GTA, you probably have enough material to fill an entire podcast. These things just, they weren't just achievements. They weren't just side quests, they weren't just daily challenges. They were just things you decided to do because the game gave you the freedom to be an idiot. Honestly, that's one of the greatest compliments you can give a game. It lets you be curious. Modern games don't always encourage curiosity. A lot of them encourage efficiency. Finish that objective, collect these rewards, complete these daily challenges, log in tomorrow. And of course, battle passes. Here's your battle pass. Here's your premium battle pass. Here's your premium battle pass because apparently one wasn't enough. It's like every game hired the same motivational speaker whose only advice was keep the player busy. Busy doesn't always mean engaged. Sometimes it just means busy. There's a reason people still boot up games that are 10, 15, or even 20 years old. It's not because they have the newest graphics or the highest resolution textures. It's because those games became places. They became digital homes people were very happy to revisit. I still see people loading up old Pokemon games just to hear the music again. People replay Halo campaigns. People start another Skyrim save, knowing full well they're about to become a stealth archer for the 15th time. Let's be honest, they're lying. We all know exactly how that story ends, but that's part of the charm. Those games aren't just collections of mechanics anymore, they're familiar, comfortable. They're like rewatching your favorite movie or listening to an album you've memorized from beginning to end. You already know what's coming, but that's exactly why you enjoy it. Now, compare that to a lot of modern releases. How many games have you played over the last 3 years that you honestly revisit 10 years from now? Not replay because a remaster came out, not because your favorite streamer made another video about it, but because you genuinely wanted to go back to that game. That's a much smaller list than most people would like to admit. And that's not because modern developers suddenly forgot how to make good games, far from it. Some of the greatest games ever made have released in the last decade. The difference is that they have to fight for our attention in a way older games never did. The second you finish one incredible game, five more are already waiting in line. There's always another sale, another showcase, another release. Instead of asking ourselves, how much more can I discover in this world, we're asking, what should I play next? That one question changes everything. Because the moment you start thinking about the next game, you've already started leaving the current one behind. And maybe that's why so many games feel temporary now. Not because they're forgettable, but because we never give them enough time to become unforgettable. I'll make this point a couple more times before I'm done. The weirdest part about modern gaming is that even when a game succeeds, it almost feels like it isn't allowed to simply exist anymore. A game launches, players enjoy it, the developers celebrate, and then almost immediately the question becomes, okay, what's next? What is the next update, the next season, the next roadmap? It doesn't matter if players are having fun, the machine has to keep moving. And I think that's where the idea of disposable gaming really becomes obvious. Games aren't just being made to be played anymore. A lot of them are being designed to keep you constantly looking forward. There's a massive difference between a game that wants you to remember it and a game that wants you to return every single day. One is trying to create an experience, the other is trying to create a habit. And to be clear, there is nothing wrong with games wanting players to come back. Some of the greatest games ever made have had reasons to keep you playing. Minecraft has replayability, GTA Online has kept people coming back for years. A game can absolutely benefit from having a long lifespan. The problem is when longevity becomes the entire purpose. When the game isn't asking, how can we make this world worth visiting, it's asking, how can we make sure the player doesn't leave? The difference might seem small, but it completely changes how games are designed. Look at the rise of live service gaming. The idea behind it sounds amazing on paper. Instead of buying a game and waiting years for a sequel, players get a constantly evolving experience. New maps, new characters, new stories, new events, a game that grows over time. And when it works, it really works. Games like Fortnite, Final Fantasy XIV, even Helldivers 2, have shown that a live game can create incredible communities and experiences. Players can feel like they're part of something that's changing and growing alongside them. But the problem is that every company saw those successes and thought they could copy the formula. Suddenly, every publisher wanted their own Fortnite. The industry saw a successful formula and started trying to put it everywhere. And that's how we ended up in a world where games that should have been complete experiences launch feeling unfinished, because the real game is apparently coming later. The promise became, don't worry, we'll fix it. But that changes the entire relationship between players and games. Back then, buying a game usually meant buying the finished product. Sure, patches existed, developers fixed bugs, but the expectation was that the thing you bought was the thing you were getting. Now players have been accustomed to waiting for updates, waiting for the content that was advertised months before launch. Sometimes it feels like we're not buying games anymore, we're buying tickets to a future version of the game. And that future version might actually be amazing. But there's something strange about paying full price for the promise of something that doesn't exist yet. Imagine going to a restaurant and ordering a meal, and the waiter says, "Great choice, you'll get the rest of it over the next 3 years through seasonal updates." Nobody would accept that. But somehow in gaming, we've normalized it. The reason this happens is because attention has become the most valuable resource in gaming. Not even money or sales. Attention. A player who finishes a game and moves on is valuable. But a player who logs in every day for 6 months is worth much, much more. That player might buy a skin, they might purchase an expansion, they might subscribe, they might spend hundreds of hours inside your ecosystem. And from a business perspective, it makes complete sense. Companies are not charities. They want games to make money. They want their investments to succeed. Developing games costs more than ever, and publishers are looking for ways to make that money back. The problem is when the business model starts influencing the actual experience. Because games are not just products, they're art, they're interactive experiences, they're worlds people spend years creating. And when every design decision starts being filtered through, how does this increase engagement? Something important can get lost. Suddenly, a mechanic isn't added because it's fun, it's added because it increases playtime. A challenge isn't included because it's interesting, it's included because it gets players to log in. And that's when games start feeling like jobs. You don't play because you're excited, you log in because you don't want to fall behind. That feeling is something a lot of gamers have experienced without even realizing it. Opening a game and immediately feeling overwhelmed. Looking at a list of daily missions and thinking, I don't have time for all of this. Seeing events expire and feeling pressured to grind. Realizing you aren't playing because you're having fun anymore, you're playing because the game created a responsibilities. And hobbies aren't supposed to feel like responsibilities. The funny thing is, some of the most beloved games of all time weren't successful because they demanded your attention. They were successful because they respected it. They didn't need to trick you into staying. Red Dead Redemption 2 doesn't need a daily login reward because people remembered the world. Elden Ring does not need a battle pass, and Baldur Gate 3 doesn't need constant events because the experience itself is the event. These games understood something important. People don't remember how many notifications a game has sent them. They remember a game because of how it made them feel. And that's the biggest difference between a game that lasts and a game that disappears. One respects your time, the other competes for it. Unfortunately, in the modern gaming industry, there's more pressure than ever to compete for every second of a player's attention. Because when every company is fighting for your time, every game starts feeling temporary. One of the strangest side effects of modern gaming is that having more games than ever before has somehow made each individual game feel less important. You would think the opposite would happen. More choices should mean more excitement. More options should mean more opportunities to find something you love. And technically, that is true. We are living in a time where someone can discover a masterpiece from a small indie developer, play a forgotten classic from 20 years ago, or jump into a massive AAA adventure, all from the same device. Gaming has never been this accessible. So, why does it feel like gaming has never been more overwhelming? The answer is sitting right in front of almost every player: the backlog. The terrifying list of games you swear you're going to play someday. Everyone has one. Maybe yours is a Steam library with hundreds of games you've collected during sales. Maybe it's a PlayStation account filled with games you downloaded because they were free with your subscription. Maybe it's a Nintendo Switch sitting on your shelf with games you bought because you thought, I'll definitely play this when I have some time. Except somehow that time just never comes. And the funny thing is, it's not because we don't like those games. A lot of the games sitting in our backlog are probably incredible. They're games we were genuinely excited about, games we watched trailers for, games we told our friends, I'm definitely playing that. Then we bought them and somehow never touched them. It's almost like owning a game has become the final goal instead of actually playing it. And honestly, who can blame them? Games have never been easier to buy. Back then, buying a game was a commitment. You had to physically go somewhere, spend your money, and bring home one specific game. That decision mattered because you couldn't instantly replace it. If you bought a bad game, you were stuck with it. If you bought a good game, you were probably going to spend months with it. Now, a game can go from being something you've never heard of to something sitting in your library within minutes. A random trailer catches your attention, you see a streamer playing it, someone on Twitter says it's underrated, Steam has a 70% discount, suddenly your wallet is lighter and your backlog is heavier. The convenience is amazing, but it also changed our relationship with games. When something is difficult to attain, we naturally value it more. When something is unlimited, it becomes easier to ignore. It's the same reason people sometimes appreciate a small collection of movies more than a streaming service with 10,000 options. When you have endless choices, making a choice becomes harder. You spend more time deciding what to watch than actually watching something. Gaming has fallen into the same trap. We have too many options. And weirdly enough, too many options can make everything feel less special. Think about opening a streaming service. You scroll for 30 minutes looking for something to watch, give up, and end up rewatching the same show you've already seen 5 times. It's not because there aren't any good options, it's because there are too many. Now apply that to gaming. You finally finish a game you spent weeks with. Maybe you loved it, maybe you got attached to the characters, maybe the ending stuck with you. Then you open your library, there are 50 other games waiting. Instead of sitting with that experience, thinking about it, maybe replaying your favorite moments, you immediately start searching for the next thing. Next game, the next obsession. The problem isn't really that we have too many good games. The problem is that we're always looking past the one we're currently playing. Subscription services have only accelerated this feeling. Again, services like Game Pass and PlayStation Plus are incredible values. Being able to try games you never would have purchased is one of the best things to happen to gaming. Smaller games get discovered and players take more chances. Developers can reach audiences they might not have found otherwise. But there is another side to unlimited access. When every game is available, fewer games feel like an event. Think about what happened when a big game released 10 years ago. People talked about it for months before launch because everyone was waiting for that one experience. Now, a major release can arrive on the same day as 10 other interesting games. Instead of saying, this is the game everyone is playing, the conversation becomes, which one of these 20 games should I start? And that creates a strange kind of anxiety. Gaming is supposed to be relaxing, But sometimes it feels like we're managing a schedule. I need to finish this before the next release. I need to play this game because everyone is talking about it. The word need starts appearing way too often for a hobby. Nobody says I need to watch this movie before the next movie comes out. Nobody says I need to finish this book because the internet has moved on. But gamers constantly feel this pressure. And when you combine that pressure with the sheer amount of games available, it creates burnout. You start a game, you enjoy it, you leave the first game unfinished. Then another release happens, then another. Eventually, you have 20 games that are all halfway completed, and none of them feel special anymore. It's not because the games have failed, far from it. It's because they were competing against everything else. And that's something older games just didn't have to deal with. The game didn't have to fight against thousands of other games for your attention. It just had to be good enough to keep you interested. Today, every game is competing against the entire history of gaming. A new indie title isn't just competing against other indie games, it's competing against Mario, Zelda, GTA, Minecraft, Elden Ring, Fortnite, Call of Duty, and every other incredible experience you've ever had. That's an impossible standard. And it explains why some games that are genuinely great can still feel forgettable. They're not bad, they're just surrounded by way too much. Maybe that's why some of the most memorable gaming experiences happen when we limit ourselves, when we stop chasing every new release, when we pick one game and actually give it the attention it deserves. Because a game doesn't become meaningful because it's new, it becomes meaningful because of the time we invest in it, the memories we create, the moments we experience, the stories we tell other people years later. A backlog is basically a graveyard of good intentions. It's filled with games we wanted to love but never gave enough time to. And maybe the biggest irony of modern gaming is this: we have more games available than any generation before us, but we have less time to truly appreciate them. Problem isn't that gaming doesn't have enough experience worth playing. There's tons, and there's more coming every day. The problem is that we have forgotten how to sit down and let one experience matter. There was a time when playing a game was the entire experience. You didn't need to know what everyone else thought about it. You didn't need a 10-minute breakdown explaining why the ending was actually good. You didn't need a ranking of every weapon before starting. You simply bought the game, sat down, and played. That sounds incredibly simple, but I think that's something we've slowly but surely lost. Today, games don't just exist as games anymore, they exist as content. And that difference has completely changed how we experience them. Because before a lot of people even touch a new game, they've already consumed hours of it. They've watched trailers, reactions, interviews, reviews, gameplay previews, themes, theories, leaks, and debates. By the time they finally load into the game themselves, a huge part of the experience has already been shaped by everyone else. Instead of discovering a game, we're arriving at a place where millions of people have already told us what we're supposed to think. And the weird thing is, we don't even realize how much influence that has on us. A game launches, and within hours, the internet starts creating a narrative around it. This is the greatest game ever made. The developer has fallen off. This shaved gaming. This killed gaming. Everything becomes extreme. There is no middle ground anymore. A game isn't allowed to simply be good. It has to be a masterpiece or a disaster. It has to be the next big thing or an embarrassing failure. And sometimes the actual game gets lost somewhere in the middle. A lot of games don't fail because they're bad. They fail because they don't become the conversation. That's the reality of modern gaming. Again, attention is everything. A game can have amazing gameplay, incredible art direction, and a passionate development team. But if the internet isn't talking about it, it almost feels like it never happened. Meanwhile, another game can have problems, glitches, or questionable decisions. But if everyone is making videos about it, suddenly it's impossible to ignore. The algorithm doesn't care if the conversation is positive or negative. It just cares that people are watching. And this has created a strange environment where controversy can sometimes be more valuable than quality. A game can disappear because nobody talks about it, or it can stay relevant because everyone is arguing about it. Either way, the attention keeps flowing. You can see this everywhere. A new game releases for the first few days, it's everywhere. Every creator has a video, every social media platform is filled with clips. Then the honeymoon period dies. The videos slow down, the memes disappear, the conversations move on. And suddenly, that game that was supposed to change everything is now something people barely mention. It's almost like the internet has a giant reset button. Every week, something new comes along and pushes everything else out. And this creates a problem for both players and developers. Players feel pressure to experience games as quickly as possible because they don't want to miss the conversation. Developers feel pressure to create games that can survive inside that conversation. Everyone is fighting the same battle. How do we stay relevant? This is why so many modern games are designed around constant engagement. They need updates, events, challenges, and new content because simply releasing a great game isn't always enough anymore. A game has to compete with every other piece of entertainment fighting for someone's attention. It's competing against YouTube, against TikTok, against movies, shows, social media, and every other distraction available. The game isn't just competing against other games anymore, it's competing against the entire internet. And that's an impossible battle because the internet never sleeps. There is always something new happening, a new trend, a new announcement, a new reason to stop caring about whatever you cared about yesterday. That's why games struggle to become cultural moments like they used to. Not because people don't love games, but because nothing gets time to breathe. Imagine if a game like The Last of Us released today, and everyone had already seen every major emotional moment within 48 hours. Imagine if players couldn't discuss their favorite scenes without someone posting the ending in the comments. Imagine if everyone was too busy arguing about review scores and sales numbers to actually appreciate the story. That's the environment games exist in now. Everything is immediately analyzed, immediately judged, immediately ranked, immediately replaced. And honestly, I think this has changed the way we play. A lot of people don't experience games anymore, they perform them. They play games with the knowledge that they're going to talk about them later. They're thinking about whether something will make a good clip, whether they found something worth posting, whether their opinion matches the popular opinion. The experience becomes less personal. Instead of asking, "Did I enjoy this?" we start asking, "Is this worth talking about?" And those are completely different questions. One is about our own enjoyment, the other is about getting approval from everyone else. Gaming has always been a very social hobby. Sharing experiences is one of the best parts about it. Talking with friends about a game, recommending them something amazing, watching someone else experience a favorite moment for the first time. That's all part of the magic. The problem is when the conversation becomes more important than the experience, when we spend more time discussing games than actually playing them, when we watch someone else have fun instead of creating our own memories. Because the truth is, some of the best gaming experiences aren't always the ones everyone is talking about. Sometimes they're the random games nobody expected to love. Sometimes they're the games that never became a trend, but somehow became important to you. Those are the games that prove something important. Game's value isn't determined by how long it stays in the spotlight, it's determined by how long it stays in your memory. And that's something the modern gaming industry has forgotten. Because trends disappear, algorithms change, the internet moves on. But the games that truly matter are the ones that find a way to stay with you long after everyone else has stopped talking. After everything we've talked about, you might start thinking that modern gaming is doomed. That every new game is just another piece of disposable content waiting to be replaced by whatever comes next. But I don't think that's true. And honestly, I think that's what makes this conversation so interesting. Because even in an industry that feels obsessed with speed, there are still games that manage to break through. There are still games that become more than just releases, they become memories. And that's what separates a good game from a truly special one. A special game doesn't just entertain you while you're playing it, it leaves something behind. Think about the games that you still remember years after finishing them, not just the games you think are technically impressive, not the games with the highest review scores, or not even the games that won the most awards. The games that actually mean something to you. Maybe it was a game you played during a specific time in your life. Maybe it was a story that hit you harder than you expected. Those games become connected to memories outside of the game itself. That's the secret. That's the sauce. The best games aren't remembered because of how much content they had. They're remembered because they created moments. Again, I go back to games like Red Dead Redemption 2. On paper, you could describe it as an open world Western game where you ride horses. But that description doesn't explain why people still talk about it years later. You don't remember every mission, you remember the atmosphere. You remember riding through the wilderness. You remember random encounters. Spending hours doing absolutely nothing important because the world was interesting enough to simply just exist. RDR2 understands something that a lot of modern games forget. Not every second has to be filled with a reward. Sometimes the journey itself is the reward. And that's a difficult concept in an industry obsessed with engagement numbers. Because from a business perspective, a player slowly exploring a world and appreciating the details isn't as easy to measure as someone logging in every day to complete challenges. But those quiet moments are often the ones players remember the most. The same thing happened with Elden Ring, something I had to bring up again also. One of the reasons Elden Ring became such a phenomenon wasn't just because it was difficult. Plenty of games are difficult. It wasn't just because it had a massive world, plenty of games have huge maps. It was because it trusted players. It let people get lost. It let people discover things without constantly pointing a giant marker on the screen telling them exactly where to go. You could walk in a random direction and find something incredible. A hidden boss, a weapon you never knew existed. The game respected curiosity. And curiosity is one of the most important parts of gaming because curiosity creates personal experiences. Two people can play Elden Ring for 100 hours and have completely different stories. One person might become a legendary warrior, another person might spend half their time exploring caves and accidentally finding secrets. Someone else might create the weirdest build imaginable and somehow make it work. The game isn't just giving you an experience, it's giving you the tools to create your own. That's why people still talk about games like Minecraft years later. Minecraft doesn't survive because of constant updates. It survives because every player creates their own memories. Everyone has their own story, their own world that they build. The first time a creeper destroyed something they spent hours making, those memories belong to the players. And that's something no battle pass or daily challenge can manufacture. You can't force someone to create a lifelong memory. You can only create the environment where one has the chance to happen. That's what makes games different from other forms of entertainment. A movie can make you feel something, but a game lets you participate. It lets you be part of the story. And when a game takes advantage of that, it becomes something much more powerful. This is also why some older games continue to survive despite being outdated. People don't return to old games because they think the graphics are better. Nobody is looking at a PlayStation 2 game in 2026 and saying, well, this texture quality is incredible. They return because of what those games represent. They remember where they were when they played them. They remember the feelings they had. Everything ages, but memory don't. And that's something the gaming industry should never forget. The games people love the most aren't always the ones with the most content. They're the ones that make every piece of content matter. A game doesn't need 1,000 hours of meaningless activities to be valuable. Sometimes it just needs a handful of unforgettable moments. That's why a 10-hour indie game can sometimes leave a bigger impact than a 100-hour open world game. That's why people replay games they already know everything about. That's why someone can spend $60 on a game 20 years ago and still say it was one of the best purchases they ever made. Because they weren't buying hours, they were buying memories. And that's the thing disposable gaming struggles to create. Memories require time, they require attention, they require players to slow down. The industry keeps chasing ways to keep people playing longer, but the games that truly last aren't necessarily the ones that keep players trapped. They're the ones players willingly return to. There's a difference. One creates obligation, the other creates connection. And maybe that's the biggest lesson from the games that have survived the test of time. The goal was to make players remember forever. After everything we've talked about, it might seem like the solution is simple. Just go back to the old days, remove live service games, stop making huge open worlds, get rid of battle passes, go back to physical copies, which I agree with. Go back to when games release finished and nobody had a massive backlog. But honestly, I don't think that's realistic. The gaming industry isn't going backward, and it shouldn't, because as much as we criticize modern gaming, there are so many things about it that are genuinely incredible. Independent developers can create games that reach millions of people without needing a giant publisher. Players can experience games from every generation with just a few clicks. Accessibility options allow more people than ever to enjoy games. Communities can form around games from completely different parts of the world. Gaming has grown, and growth isn't the problem. The problem is that somewhere along the way, we started confusing having more with appreciating more. We have more games, more ways to play, but sometimes the thing we need isn't more. Sometimes we need to slow down because the truth is, the responsibility doesn't only fall on developers and publishers. Players have a role too. We have to remember that gaming is a hobby, not a race. There is no prize for finishing every game that releases. Somewhere along the way, we started treating our free time like another resource we had to optimize. Even relaxing became something we had to be productive about. I need to finish the game before the next one comes out. But why? Why do we put so much pressure on something that is supposed to bring us joy? Sometimes the best way to appreciate a game is to stop worrying about whether you're playing it correctly. Play the world build. Ignore the side quests everyone says are pointless. Take the scenic route. Explore the random corner of the map. Spend an hour doing something completely unnecessary just because it's fun. Those are the moments that become memories. The gaming industry has spent years trying to figure out how to keep players engaged, but maybe the secret was never engagement. Maybe it was connection. A game doesn't become special because it gives you something to do every day. It becomes special because it gives you something to remember years later. That's why the future of gaming shouldn't be about making bigger and bigger experiences that demand more and more of your time. It should be about making experiences that respect the time we choose to give them. A 10-hour game that leaves a lasting impression can be more valuable than a 100-hour game filled with meaningless activities. A small indie game created by a handful of people can sometimes impact players more than $1 billion blockbuster. A game doesn't need to be endless to be valuable. In fact, sometimes endings are what make games special. There's something powerful about finishing a story and sitting there for a moment afterward, just thinking about the journey, reflecting on the choices you made. Not every game needs to become a platform. Sometimes a game can just be a game, a beginning, a middle, an ending. And I think players are starting to realize that again. That's why we continue seeing people return to older games. That's why shorter experiences are finding audiences. That's why indie games continue to thrive. That's why players still get excited about games that feel focused and complete. People don't hate modern gaming, they hate feeling like gaming has become another obligation. They don't hate having choices, they hate feeling overwhelmed. They hate when length replaces meaning. Because at the end of the day, gamers aren't asking for less. Far from it. They're asking for something that feels worth their time. And that's the biggest difference between a disposable game and a timeless one. A disposable game asks, how long can we keep you here? A timeless game asks, what will you remember when you leave? The answer was never more content, it was always more meaning. The games that survive generations aren't the only ones that constantly chase trends, they're the ones that create experiences people can't replace. They become part of people's lives, they become stories friends tell each other years later. They become the reason someone falls in love with gaming in the first place. Because gaming was never special, because we had unlimited things to play. Gaming was special because one game could mean anything. One experience that stayed with you long after you turned off the console. And maybe that's the thing we need to remember in an era where everything is fighting for our attention. The best games were never the ones that demanded the most from us. They were the ones that gave us something we could never forget. Games aren't too expensive. They're just competing in a world where everything is trying to become disposable. But the truly great ones, they never were. They became memories. And memories are the one thing no algorithm, no battle pass, and no new release can ever replace.
Getting off this time.
Hey, thanks for watching the video. If you made it this far, thank you for watching the video. I appreciate you truly. This one took me a little longer to make because it's a little bit longer of a video. I'm gonna try to do longer videos from now on. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, so you know the next time I post another video. I appreciate everyone for watching. See you next time.